Have you ever felt drawn towards something you couldn't name? An inner pull, a kind of psychic undertow. Not emptiness exactly, but a pressure beneath awareness, repeating without reason, unraveling what we think we know. In Freud's theory of the death drive, we meet the part of the psyche that urges us to return, not to heal, but to undo. This is the death drive. Welcome. This is an introduction to the death drive. There's a kind of movement inside us, not one of hope, not one of flight, but a strange circuit, silent and sometimes numbing. This repetition doesn't heal. Freud noticed not in a laboratory, but in a playpen, a boy throwing a spool back and forth. He called it coming and going, or fort and da. Absence staged, rehearsed, not to dissolve it, but to sustain it. He called this the death drive, a kind of ghost in the system. A pleasure beyond pleasure, a principle beyond pleasure, one that haunts our behaviors, slips beneath desire, and yet desire is shaped by it, a drive not towards an object, but toward the scene, the conditions under which desire endlessly restages itself. Not to change, but to persist, to repeat, not to return home, but to circle the block. Lacan sharpened the angle. For him, the death drive isn't a thirst for death. It's a rupture in the field of meaning. It's a mark where language loops back on itself. You see, for Lacan, drives are not instincts. They are not primitive urges seeking satisfaction. They're structural rhythms, a resonance within the symbolic order. They're a pulse in the network of signifiers that names us, shapes us, speaks us. Before we speak, we are spoken. Before we desire, the other has already left a gap. This gap is the death drive. The persistence of something that never fully enters symbolization, a failure to represent, repeated precisely because it cannot be resolved. And in this repetition, we find strange comfort. We may not want it, but it returns all the same. The abusive relationship revisited. The same role cast once again. The addiction. The breakup pattern. The joyless task we can't stop performing. Freud wrote of patients repeating what they could not remember. They suffer it. They act it. They reenact it. Not because they love it, but because something unspoken insists. This unspoken something is the death drive. It is a drive, a kind of insistence without purpose. It's not goal-seeking. It's not even self-preserving. But it's machinic. It is relentless. It is a grinding movement in the psyche's gears. You start to see the drive doesn't want anything. It doesn't ask for pleasure. It doesn't ask for release. It just follows the bend in the structure, a Mobius strip folding inside our speech, our choices, our timing. This is what it means to say what the death drive is, and it is not about dying. It's about what keeps going, even when nothing new is produced. It is not self-harm. It's structural persistence. And we all have our loops that go on, and that which we do over and over and again and again. Not to discover, but to preserve something unsayable, a kernel of loss, a piece of the real. Lacan calls it Object A, the lost thing that anchors our desire, but never quite shows its face. And so we repeat, because there's no whole to return to. There's only the trace. The drive traces that path again and again, and in that repetition, we speak ourselves into being, not to be cured and not to be rescued, but to mark where we were and that we were here. If desire is what we chase, drive is what circles, not toward greater satisfaction, but towards the edge of it, where the act itself becomes the aim. The drive doesn't want the object, it wants the circuit that loops around it. It wants the same tension, the same click, the same scratch on the vinyl that never resolves. Freud gave the drive a pulse, in the life drive and in death. But Lacan gave it form. He mapped it against the field of the other, where subject and object are tangled in misrecognition. And this is the hinge. While instinct aims for release, drive loops around a lost object, something that was never possessed, yet sculptures the scene. In Lacan's mirror stage, the infant sees a total image of the body, imaginary wholeness, and that image masks the fragmentation the child feels. The image doesn't match the body, and the drive arises in the gap. The image the child hears. Moreover, the voice the child hears, the gaze that frames them. These are not comforting. These are alienating. The scopic or visual drive doesn't seek to see. It seeks to be seen. And not just by any eye, by the gaze, that invasive presence that watches from within the scene. It is not your mother's eye. It is the cut in her looking. It is the failure to return your gaze. This is how the drive speaks. Not through content, but through position. Not what is seen, but what is missing in the seeing. When we feel exposed, humiliated, overwhelmed by the presence of another, we're not just ashamed, we are driven. And the death drive moves through that hole. The gaze that never looked back. And the invocatory drive, it speaks without needing meaning. The cry of the infant. The sigh of the adult, not to communicate, but to insist. It is not the content of the speech that matters, it is the return. Think of the voice that calls without answer. Think of the song that you hum that never had words. The scream into the wind. These are not expressions. They are traces of the drive. Because to be a subject, in Lacanian terms, is not to be a self. It is to be divided, marked by lack. The drive is the echo that remains after signification fails. And this is why the death drive is not destructive. It doesn't seek to shatter you. It rebuilds the scene in which you emerge. Over and over, again and again, you speak, not to be heard, but because something in you insists on looping. You return to the painting, not to see more, but because it failed to show you everything the first time. And so you look again, and you look again, and you speak again, and you speak again, and you repeat the gesture, not because you forgot, but because something wasn't captured. This is the real, and the death drive scratches at it. A repetition that refuses symbolization. It's not memory. It's not trauma. It's structure, and the subject that speaks through it does not dissolve. The subject marks a place. It's a trace. It's a split. And from that place, we act. We do not act to be whole. We act to mark the loss. The death drive moves in circles, repeating, not to console, but to return. We've explored how the psyche drifts beyond pleasure into patterns that pull us back to what's unresolved. It can feel cold. It can feel mechanical, even haunting. But there's a reason we look at all, not to celebrate suffering, but to notice its rhythm, so we can choose another, so we can choose again. What lies beyond the loop is not certainty, but a call. Desire doesn't guarantee relief, but it moves, it reaches, it sings, where repetition only echoes. In our lives, we often repeat without knowing. We repeat old fears. We repeat old roles, old scenes. Recognizing that repetition is the first interruption, we can now choose desire, and desire is the second. Desire isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper. Sometimes it's a gentle tug towards something not yet named. But it's alive, and it's yours, and it's the way through. What calls out to you in your life? Maybe a longing that's only been hinted at, yet beckons some kind of fulfillment. What if you began reaching for that even in the midst of repetition? And here, where repetition lets go, desire steps in. Lacan says desire isn't just craving. It's not a simple want. It's the residue of lack. But yes, also, it's a movement towards something undefined, yet vital. Desire arises not from absence alone, but from the symbolic fracture we all live within. It's born when the subject recognizes there is no full satisfaction, only motion, only reaching. And that reaching, that is where life blooms. When we follow desire, we don't erase pain, but we create meaning. We act, we speak, we risk. Desire pushes us out of inertia. It doesn't promise pleasure, but it generates creation. It generates connection. It can even generate love. And in a world of cycles and loops, desire is what lets us write something new. And so ask, what stirs beneath your repetitions? What doesn't quite fit the loop? That might be your beginning. That might be your way in. That could be the beginning of that satisfaction of your current desires.